Alrighty. Hey, y'all, what's up?
Hey, good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Hope
Morning.
everybody's having a good week.
Oh, it's been a full one. As of this taping, we are right on top of Oktoberfest.
Oh, yeah, it's going to be here. It's going to be fun. I hope that by the time people see this, they
Mm,
went to a great time.
yes, yes. It'll be great. So, what do we have
All right.
today?
So we have two more stories today. We have an Old Testament story, of course, and a New Testament story. The Old Testament, both of them are a little bit challenging today.
Mm-hmm.
The first one is about Sarah, Hagar, and Abraham. We talked about Abraham and Sarah last week, but we have a new character today. So I'm just going to read the story
Okay.
from the Spark Children's Bible.
All right.
We'll see what's going on with Abraham and Sarah and this person named Hagar. When Abram was 99 years old, he and his wife Sarah were still waiting for God's promise of a huge family to come true. Abram was getting frustrated. He asked God, "What are you waiting for?" God spoke to Abram, "I will keep my promise and I will change your names. Instead of Abram, your name will be Abraham. Instead of Sarai, your name will be Sarah." Abraham was afraid of what God said. He thought he was too old to become the father of so many people, and his wife was too old to have children. He fell on his face and peeked up with one eye. Could God really make such a thing happen? Later, as Abraham was sitting by the tent, he saw three strangers walking toward him. Abraham squinted into the sun and wondered who this might be, who would be visiting him on such a hot day. Hi, Abraham. Hi, Abraham said when they arrived. You must be tired from traveling. Would you like to sit down to rest and have some food? Quickly, Abraham said, "Ask Sarah to make some bread." He ordered his servant to prepare some meat. Sarah stood hiding in the tent, listening to the visitors. Who were they? Why had they come to her house? And why were they talking about her? She leaned in a little closer. Your wife, Sarah, will have a son, the visitor said to Abraham. Sarah started to laugh. Didn't they know that she was too old to have a child? The visitors looked up. Why is Sarah laughing? They asked. Doesn't she believe God's promises will happen? God's promise to Abraham did happen. Sarah had a baby boy and named him Isaac, which means laughter. Abraham and Sarah's family grew and grew and grew, and God blessed each generation with laughter and happiness. Well, that's a good story, but that's odd. I don't hear anything about this person named Hagar. So, who do you think Hagar was?
We might have to go back to the grown-up Bible or go back to the source.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Little detective
So
work.
I did that, and I looked, and Hagar happened to be another lady who was around.
Mhm.
And this story is about God's promises. God made promises to Abraham and Sarah, and ultimately they were patient. But in the meantime, they weren't patient.
Yeah, it did mention that Abraham had some doubts. Like, could he
Yeah.
really be a dad at 99? Like, could Sarah really have a baby at her age? And the other part is, when we read our story last week and God first showed up and told Abram what was going to happen, that he was going to be the father of a great nation. Um, I remember we said Abram was 75 at the time. And then when we catch up with them in this story, Abram's 99. Abraham is 99 years old. So 24 years have gone by. So my math is right. 24 years have gone by, and Abram has been waiting. Like, sometimes waiting for an hour or waiting for days or waiting for months is hard, but waiting 24 years, that's a long time to wait. So, what did Abram do after 24 years?
Well, he got impatient, just like everybody gets impatient because we want what we want now. And when God made this promise, like Abraham and Sarah were impatient. They wanted this now. So God promised to make this thing happen, this family happen. But when they got impatient, both Abraham and Sarah got impatient and said, well, God was supposed to, or Abraham was supposed to obey God and stay with Sarah, but he went away with Hagar but eventually came back to Sarah. And then God finally fulfilled his promises. But in the meantime, there was this other little boy that Hagar had, and his name, you know what his name was?
Ishmael, right?
Ishmael, yeah.
Ishmael.
Ishmael, yeah. Isaac and Ishmael. So you have these two boys. So now there is a lot. Now there is an even bigger family. And there's also more complications that come from this. So sometimes when we aren't patient, oftentimes when we aren't patient, because God's time isn't necessarily the time we want our schedule, then things get kind of messed up.
Yeah. Sarah and Abraham took matters into their own hands, and things got really messy. But I think what's important is, even though things got messy, God didn't leave Sarah or Abraham. But also, what's very important is God stayed with Hagar, and was there for Hagar. I mean, Hagar went through a tough time too, and God was there, and so it's sort of like God picks up the whole mess that we make and keeps moving, and that seems to be a theme in the Bible. Is we make messes, and God picks up the messes and keeps moving.
Yep, I think so. We're good at making messes. God's good at cleaning up those messes. Okay, so that's an important story, and we're going to keep in mind Sarah and Abraham and Hagar for many, many years. In fact, we still think about them today, and some of the disobedience still is in the world today. All right, so the other story from the New Testament, something I love to talk about, wilderness temptations. In fact, my sermon I'm writing, actually, I've been writing this week, and I've got to finish it today and tomorrow, is about wilderness. All right, so this story is about wilderness temptation. First of all, what's wilderness again for the boys and girls?
It's lonely.
What's that?
It's kind of wild.
I think it's an open definition. Wilderness is different, means different things for different people. Generally speaking, we would refer it as like wilderness is nature, being in creation.
Yeah.
It has the word wild in it.
Yep.
So it's kind of a wild, unruly place. Sometimes that's kind of neat to go out where things aren't so structured, where you can get away from the pavement and the sidewalks and the known, and head out into the unknown. And sometimes that's kind of neat. Sometimes that's kind of scary because you don't know what's out there.
And so often in the wilderness, you are alone. And sometimes being alone can be really nice. Sometimes it being really
well, no, not really. There's always some animal, you just don't see it.
Well, yeah,
you're never truly alone.
You are right, which makes it even scarier because they're watching you. Okay, tempted. This is what this Bible story is called. And here, you want to see the picture. That looks like he looks very unsettled. That's Jesus looking.
Oh, Jesus! Oh no!
Yeah, looks like he's having not a good day. Okay, here we go. Tempted. After Jesus was baptized in the Jordan River, God led him to the desert. So the desert is a wilderness in this story. Okay. Jesus was all alone without any food for 40 days.
Growly stomach.
Yes.
I don't think most of our kids can go 40 minutes.
I know. He prayed to God for help, but it was still really hard to be in the wilderness. Jesus got very hungry. His stomach was rumbling. The devil came to Jesus and tried to tempt him. If you are God's son, tell this stone to turn to bread for you to eat. Jesus remembered God's words and answered, no one can live on food alone. Then the devil led Jesus up to a place where he could see all the kingdoms of the world and said, I can give the world to anyone. If you turn away from God, you could be king with power over all these lands. People would worship and honor only you. Jesus remembered more of God's words. Worship and serve only God. Lastly, the devil tempted Jesus to jump off the roof of the temple. If you are God's son, jump. God will send angels to protect you. They will catch you so you will not get hurt. But Jesus knew the word of God also says, don't test God. Jesus was tempted 3 times to go against God's word. Each time Jesus knew God was with him. Each time Jesus said no. Jesus was in the desert and hungry for a long time. He was happy that God was always with him, especially when he was tempted to do wrong.
Mm.
All right. So what are the lessons for our boys and girls here?
Well, I don't know about you, but I don't do my best thinking when I'm hungry.
Oh yeah.
So the fact that Jesus was into like 40 days without food, which is like super duper hungry, would not advise anyone try it. And then and that's when the devil shows up to try and get him to do wrong. Like that's very intense. Ugh, that's hard.
Yep.
Mhm.
Absolutely. But Jesus still had a clear head and a clear heart to know, to
Mhm.
remember God's words that comforted him.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so ultimately, Jesus was tempted, but Jesus didn't enter into temptation. Yeah. So how are ways our boys and girls are tempted?
Uh, let's see.
What about let's say, for instance, there's a plate of cookies, fresh baked cookies.
Oh yeah.
Mm.
Right over here on the cabinet. And
Those are
been
for
told,
Oktoberfest, Pastor
yeah,
Eric. Can't be
exactly.
eating.
And they've been forbidden. Do not go to get those cookies because they're for Oktoberfest. So in some ways, you not only want the cookie because it's a good cookie, but you were told not to have it, so it makes it maybe even better.
Mm.
That's what temptation is. Boys and girls have that too.
I wonder
Yeah,
if
I
any
think
of
when I
our
was their age, for me, it was my parents were like, Daniel, go do your homework. And as soon as I'm told to do the homework, the temptation was to procrastinate.
And not do the homework. That's right. Or maybe it's bedtime and you're supposed to be doing work on your laptop, homework on your laptop. Instead, you are watching YouTube videos. Now, I'm not saying any of our do that. I'm not saying any of our youth ever do that. Or play games or play Fortnite or whatever they play.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying it might happen.
Or what if boys and girls they have been they've been told it's time for bed and maybe the lights are off and everything and they're tempted to, well, I'm not tired right now, maybe I'll stay up and play on a game or do something, instead of going to sleep.
Yep.
That we know that, yeah, I mean, yeah, you may not be tired now, but there's a bedtime so that you get plenty of sleep and you feel good the next day. Because if you don't get enough sleep, then the next day is rough.
Yep, you're right.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of ways that boys and girls and grown-ups are tempted. And so this particular story helps us to remember, give comfort that Jesus was tempted and Jesus had the strength to do the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Jesus has been there too. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. All right, next week, our stories are going to be Isaac and Rebecca. Is that you? It's not about you.
I think that Rebecca has a K in it. I have a 2 C's in my name.
All right, we'll see. We'll see about this. And then the next one is Jesus's Nazareth sermon. Okay. All right. We will hear about those next week. All right. Y'all have a great week.
All right.
Good. You
See you
guys
around.
All right. Bye now.
Bye.